Fox host Jeanine Pirro is one of Trump's biggest cheerleaders, so she decided to do a giant PR fluff piece for both him and his best friend Bibi Netanyahu. Watch how soft these questions are. These are legendary in how pathetically weak they are.
So you and President Trump are both straight-talking, no-nonsense, in-your-face. You find that you're similar?
Well, sort of the press treatment of my tenures has some similarities to
the United States press and their treatment of President Trump?
Some.
Does it frustrate you?
No. I have a hard time getting used to any other reality, but I don't let it bother me. I just do what I think is right. And there's a social media, too, that is a new phenomenon today.
That it can benefit you. Your father was a big supporter of Jabotinsky and the Iron Fist. He's passed, as has your brother. If you believe in the afterlife, they're looking down at you now. What do you think they're thinking as they're looking down on you on this historic day?
I think they'd be very proud and very happy, because they'll understand the historic significance of this day. I mean, the greatest power on earth, our greatest ally, the United States of America, has touched on the core being of our people, which has been Jerusalem. Jerusalem has been the pulsating heart of the Jewish people for 3,000 years. And now comes an American president and fulfilled his promise to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, which is common sense, but somebody had to say it, to break this charade of hypocrisy. He just punched right through it. And I think this is great. This is a significant historical point, as has been his decision to confront Iran, to pull out of that horribly flawed deal. I think these are two great things.
Do you think that you will face consequences from the other, like Iran, the other Arab nations?
I think the Arabs are happy about this, about the embassy. I think they sort of have to, raise the usual protests, but I don't think they really care that much. And the Palestinians, certainly in Gaza, will use it as a pretext to try to rile up the masses against Israel. But what they want is not a peace with Israel. They want a peace without Israel. They don't want a Palestinian state next to Israel. They want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. That's why this conflict goes on, because they want to throw us into the sea. And the minute we'll get Arab leaders, as we got with Sadat and with King Hussein, the late King Hussein of Jordan, who are willing to coexist with Israel, then we're moving towards peace. I see that happening in the outer ring of Arab countries. And I think that part of that is this coming together against Iran, and President Trump is helping that a lot.
But Iran now is aligning itself with Russia and has its proxy in Syria.
Yeah, I think Iran wants to move its army to Syria now that the war against ISIS is winding down there. And we're absolutely, and they're saying openly that their goal is to bring these lethal weapons to close to Israel's border, 1,000 miles away from Iran, right next to our border, with the aim of destroying us. Well, I've said no. We'll confront you now before you build up your forces rather than later. What would you do? Any country would do. I mean, if somebody tried to move, to move right next to the United States, horrendous missiles and other things, with the express purpose of annihilating the United States, you think you'd sit back? No. I'm not sure that Russia wants Iran to do that, because...
Really?
Yeah, well, yes, because I think they're in competition now for the spoils, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure there's a necessary conflict. But Iran is at conflict with us. Iran is in conflict with the United States. Iran is in conflict with just about all the Arab states in the Middle East. And I think we should unite together under President Trump's leadership to kick Iran out of Syria and to constrain and stop Iran's aggression. If you want to advance peace, that's how you advance it, by confronting the enemies of peace.
A strong Israel.
Definitely.
Is what gets the Arabs to the peace table.
Yeah, I mean, what has happened with the Arab states is they've recognized that Israel is here to stay. You can't defeat it, and because you can't defeat it, you make peace with it. It's called Peace Through Strength.
Peace Through Strength.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
That was literally the worst interview I've ever seen in my life. I like the end. She's like, thank you. Thank you so much. You're so perfect. I love you. How many people have you massacred today? Oh, it's glorious. Oh, my God. She said at the end there, that's how you get the Arabs to the peace table. As if Benjamin Netanyahu is interested in fucking peace, where he's openly said 1,000 times he doesn't want a Palestinian state. He doesn't want one. And he said there, talking about the Palestinians, he said they don't want a Palestinian state with Israel. They want a Palestinian state without Israel. You don't want a Palestinian state. First of all, Israel already exists. That's a fact, and it ain't going anywhere. But you don't want a Palestinian state. So he always accuses Palestinians of being guilty of what he's guilty of. He acts like outraged that some people in the Palestinian territories are against Israel existing. By the way, if you're being occupied endlessly by somebody and they're massacring your friends and your family members on a regular basis, that would kind of be the gut reaction. But Israel already exists. They're saying, hey, can we have a Palestinian state? And you say no. But then you have the nerve to go out there and say, they don't want Israel to exist. You don't want a Palestinian state to exist. And by the way, you're bombing them nonstop. Okay, look at her questions. The first one is barely a question. She's like, you're a straight-talking, no-nonsense, in-your-face guy, just like Trump. Look at the framing. So that's propaganda. That's not... If you really are doing journalism and you really want to hold powerful people accountable, that's not your default start position. Your start position is they're full of shit and you need to expose them. But she starts with, you're straight-talking, no-nonsense, in-your-face guys. Just fucking... the softest softball of all time. Then it goes from blowing him to... If you believe in the afterlife, what will your family be saying about you? Oh, God. On this historic day, what will your family be saying about you? By the way, this interview took place either as or right after the IDF just massacred peaceful Palestinian protesters. At least 60 of them were killed. Nearly 2,000 were injured. The worst examples on the Palestinian side were people throwing rocks that couldn't reach the IDF, using slingshots where the rocks couldn't reach the IDF, or they burned tires. And they were getting killed by snipers 200 yards away. They also killed women and children, by the way. So as they're carrying out a fucking massacre, Jeanine Pirro is doing a fluff piece on the guy responsible for it. To say these are moral cretins is not strong enough. And then he goes on to say, it's common sense to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Why? Why is that common sense? Why is that common sense? Answer why that's common sense without appealing to religion. Go. You can't do it. In fact, it's common sense to not do it, because if you actually gave a shit about peace, you would know that any deal in the future, if you are so inclined to do a two-state deal, would be splitting Jerusalem, and it's the capital of the Palestinian state as well. But no, you're saying it's the undivided capital of Israel, meaning, yeah, fuck your two-state deal. I don't give a fuck about your two-state deal. So when you say it's common sense to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, nothing could be further from the truth. That's the opposite of true. It's common sense to not do it if you gave a shit about peace. But you don't give a shit about peace. So it is common sense from your perspective, and it's common sense from your perspective if you actually agree with bullshit theology on this. Then he goes on to shit on the Iran deal. Of course, that makes no sense. The Iran deal makes it so that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. They lie about it all the time and say, no, it guarantees they get a nuclear weapon. Complete and utter bullshit. But there was a moment of... there was an interesting moment there where he admitted something that he probably shouldn't have, which is he said, basically Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, they don't care about the Jerusalem thing. They don't give a shit at all. They're fine with what Israel and the U.S. just did here. So that's them saying, listen, all we really care about is crushing Iran. We don't care about anything else, and fuck the Palestinians. So that's a telling moment. And finally, as he keeps threatening or he keeps telling Iran that they're guilty of what he's doing. So he starts talking about Syria. No, there's been countless stories recently of Israel bombing in Syria. Not only Israel bombing Syrian government positions in Syria, which, by the way, thank you, because they're fighting Al-Qaeda, so you're acting as Al-Qaeda's air force, just like the U.S. does. Wonderful. But also, he's bombing Iranians in Syria. So, as you are bombing Syria, as you are bombing Iranians, as you are bombing Palestinians, it's all, woe is me! I'm the victim! Oh, I'm the victim! Shut the fuck up, man. This is a war criminal. He should be called out as a war criminal, but no. Fox News runs the grossest fluff piece I've ever seen in my life.